I am not a customer service provider. I am not a service worker, although my institutions are trying to frame it as that. So they would agree with you. You're a service provider. I am not.
I think we should view students as customers. And this is why I'm against public funding of universities of any kind. And look, I think there's a real problem of viewpoint diversity. And it's not easy to fix, partially because people self-select. That is, people who have non-leftist or liberal ideas, and my question is going to be, what is the difference? According to your perspective, because you're saying you're a leftist but not a liberal, and I'm not sure what that means exactly. But the reality is that the people who are not leftists or liberals are self-selected out of academia. And part of that is because they feel unwelcome there. But I think even before that, the reality is that a lot of people, that the left has so dominated our intellectual lives for the last 150 years, really since the progressive era. The left has been at the forefront, left liberal, or however you want to call it, at the forefront of intellectual activity. I think most people on the right have not felt comfortable there. Most people who are not left liberal have chosen other careers, have gone in other directions. The whole world of think tanks was created really as an outlet for conservatives and libertarians who felt uncomfortable in the academia. But there are not that many of them even there. That is, if you add all those up, it's still not going to compensate for your 9-to-1 ratio, right? So the question is, why are people on the conservative side not engaged in the kind of intellectual debates, not engaged in the kind of debates that the left and the leftists and the liberals are? And I think I have an explanation for that, but maybe we'll get to that. But it's partially the burden on people who have a different opinion to engage, right? If you're not going to go and try, then you shouldn't be surprised that your viewpoint is not represented. You never brought it to the table.
Students as customers, difference of left and liberal.
Okay, well, I'll talk about students and customers later because I think that it hinges on this term uncomfortable. Like if you're made uncomfortable, you want to not take this course. And I think that's the wrong thing to do. Education should make us all uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Number one. And customer service, I am not a customer service provider. I am not a service worker, although my institutions are, the institutions where I work are trying to frame it as that. So they would agree with you. You're a service provider. I am not. Okay, so here's the difference between the lefts and the liberals. A real leftist believes in universal values and the importance of history and culture as a basis of knowledge with which we critique the social, the political, and economic forms that we live in. Liberals believe that the present is the best world possible and that all we need to do is include everyone's points of views and feelings, and we dissolve the canon. I am totally against that. I think that the whole idea of universal reason, which for better or worse is an ideal, I've talked about this before, that came up during the French Enlightenment, especially with regard to the work of Descartes and then Voltaire, and to some not Rousseau, he's different.
Not Rousseau.
But this idea that we each have capacity for reason, and that scientific experimentation means the method that I use and the method that you use will help us arrive at the same conclusions, and that tests and experiments would allow me to see my error. That, for better or worse, was forged in France in the late 17th century. So what I think that liberals would do is like, oh, that's just heteropatriarchy, that's Eurocentrism, we should overturn that, there's indigenous cosmology. And when my students, who are all like 95% liberals, say, well, what do you think about native cosmologies? And I know that there are a lot of people here who are invested in Jungian things like that. I'll say that's myth. And myth is irrational. It can be very beautiful, but we are in a university. We want to understand the place of myth, but we use reason. So this is the difference between the leftists and the liberals. And the reason is that the universal mode of production in the world is industrial mode of production. No one's going to escape that. Industrialization, modernization has to do with standardization of forms and modes of consumption and modes of progress. So we cannot escape to a kind of primitivism. We have to move forward, not backward. That is the difference between me and my liberal colleagues, and they would hate me for saying this because they like to fetishize the primitive. I do not, because I really think that the only way forward is through reason and through Marxist reason. The other thing I was going to say was, and so the other thing that I wanted to say, Yaron, was okay. Sorry, now I've lost my thought. Okay.
No. I want to bring. I know it was directed to you, but I know your definition of woke, and a lot of that was. I just wanted people to understand what just happened. That a leftist on stage, I think, was very much in line with yours, who was very much not a leftist. And so give your definition of woke and see if you guys can parse it, if it's even different, because I think this is fascinating.
Well, I wish we had old leftists, materialist leftists, instead of what we've got in the universities. So yeah, that would be refreshing. But yeah, woke, I think what we're talking about with woke is...
Can you give your definition of it?
The definition of woke is really making sacred of historically marginalized race, gender, and sexual minorities. That is the definition.
Because it was so close to hers, but that word sacred is the word, right? And so,
So this is the fetishization and the sort of obsession. What that means then is something like you will then have, if you've got egalitarianism, it'll be, well, we must have a fixed proportion, perfectly equal representation of black students at Harvard or indigenous perspectives. And so it's that emphasis on identity rather than class, perhaps. And so this is really, I think the new left is really the force that we're looking at in universities. And one of the reasons for cancel culture, for example, it's all around culture. And it's all around this idea that this therapeutic idea that you have emotionally traumatized or harmed somebody because of their identity. And that's why we can't give you free speech, or you can't pursue this particular kind of research because you might emotionally harm somebody. And that does, I guess I would define that as a kind of leftism, more new left than old left in origins.
And you call it liberalism.
Yeah, but you could call it new left, and I'd say that I am an old left person, or defend the old left.
This brings us to, I want to come back to you, Yaron, because this brings me sort of to my next theme, which is about the economic model, because I think what's interesting is I think what you just heard was a bit of agreement on maybe ideological capture, ideological drift on that particular. Do you want to hit it now before I hit the theme?
I remember what I wanted to say, Yaron, which was that an educated public is a public good. That's why there should be public funding for universities.
That's so the next theme is on, I think, the sort of economic models that might be driving some of this, the huge drift in endowments and where the money's coming from. You think students as customers is kind of the right framework. Well, they certainly are paying a lot for their service right now. And Eric, we could get to you. They wrote a letter, but they didn't like you very much. How do you feel about that? Because it feels like you're like, oh, the customer's always right in the Ayn Rand Institute in some way. Is that?
No, the customer's often wrong. That's not the point. But I want to say something about leftism just before we get to that. Because for the first time in my life, I think, I was like, whoa, maybe I'm a leftist. Because that was amazing. I mean, I
have that on tape.
Other than the...
We did it.
Well, celebrity death match. Okay,
other than the Marxism at the end, universal reason, absolutely. That should be... And if we could return the universities to the ideas of universal reason, and reason as the means by which we... determine truth and determine what is right and what is wrong, what is true and what is not. And we focus on universal principles that are true. Wow, that would be a huge intellectual achievement and reorient the university completely.
I think the market can tell us a lot of those truths, and that might be where there's...
Look, I don't think markets tell us the truth. Markets tell us what people value at any given point in time, and a lot of times people value crap. And part of the role of universities, I think, ultimately is to elevate us and to make us better, so that we stop valuing crap, so that the market then becomes a marketplace where we value better things. I'm just saying that we should be able to value crap because that's what freedom means. Freedom means that if some people value crap, they value crap. You know, it's sad, but it's reality. I don't believe in imposing values on people. That is, I believe in judging and saying that's crap and that's good, but not imposing my system of value or what I think is good on people. I do believe there is good. I do believe there is truth, and we should strive to that, and we should help people achieve that, but not through coercive means, but through voluntary and educational means. And so I do believe students are customers, and yes, they should be felt uncomfortable. I mean, I'm a customer, my trainer, you know, my exercise trainer, he makes me feel very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. And he is a service provider. And I hire him to make me feel uncomfortable. If I could do it myself, if I could impose the pain that's involved in exercise by myself, I would do it. But I'm willing to pay somebody to do it because I can't force myself to do it myself. The same thing, I think, an educator. Educators should make you feel uncomfortable, and you as a student should embrace that. Should want the expansion of your horizon, should want the challenge of having your ideas, shaken up a little bit, the cognitive dissonance, and you should be willing to pay for it. And I think that is the sense in which, you are a customer, and the economic model today is very perverse. It is very perverse because part of the problem is you say students pay a lot of money for education. Well, do they really? I mean.
To continue watching this video, click the link in the top left or in the description below.
With a free trial, you can enjoy the full talk and thousands more.
Thank you for being part of the conversation.